My name's Ethan Morales. I'm 29, single, and I live alone in a modest ranch-style home in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. I work remotely for a software firm, and my home office is in the upstairs loft, a cozy space with a big window overlooking the front yard and driveway. That window was my favorite part of the house. I kept it cracked most of the time, especially in late September when the crisp fall air swept through like a whispered promise of winter. That Tuesday started like any other. Around noon, I was in the middle of editing some code when I noticed something, or rather, someone through the window. A man was standing at the end of my gravel driveway. He wasn't moving, just staring up at the house. He wasn't tying his shoe or checking his phone, he was just still watching. I froze mid-keystroke. Could he see me? The glare on the window made it hard to tell. After a few unsettling seconds, he simply turned and walked away, vanishing down the street. It was strange. But I shrugged it off. Maybe he was lost? Maybe he was casing the neighborhood? I didn't know. I couldn't do much but keep working. The next day, same routine. Coffee at 8, Zoom calls at 10, lunch around noon. But sometime in the early afternoon, while listening to a project manager drone on about sprint deadlines, my eyes drifted to the window again. He was back. Same guy. Same spot. Standing at the end of my driveway. Head tilted slightly upward, like he was trying to see through the glass and into my soul. This time, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Something about him felt darker. Intentional. Like he wasn't just curious, he knew I was there. I must have zoned out staring at him, because someone on the call asked if I was alright. I lied, said I had a headache, and left the meeting early. I kept glancing out the window, but after a minute, he was gone again. No car. No trace. That evening, I went outside to clear my head. My yard looked normal, untouched. But when I stood at the edge of the driveway and looked up at my window, I realized he would have had a perfect view of me sitting at my desk. I went back inside and made a frozen dinner. My brother Marco called, and I told him about the guy. He laughed it off, saying it was probably just a bored neighbor or someone confused about the address. I wanted to believe that too. But then it got worse. Around 9 p.m., I was half asleep on the couch, watching an old episode of The Twilight Zone with the volume low. That's when I heard its soft footsteps on the front porch. Slow. Measured. Not the scurrying of an animal or the shuffle of a passerby. I sat up, heart pounding. The footsteps paused right at the door. Then, nothing. Silence. I jumped up and peered through the peephole. I could barely make out a silhouette walking back toward the road. When I opened the door cautiously, a piece of paper fluttered off and landed at my feet. It was taped to the inside of the door. On it, in shaky handwriting, "Ethan, answer the door." My stomach flipped. How the hell did he know my name? I called the police. 2 officers showed up within 15 minutes. I explained everything. They wrote it all down but said unless he trespassed or made a direct threat, there wasn't much they could do. "Let us know if it happens again," one of them said. That didn't exactly put me at ease. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing phantom noises, kept checking the window. My mind spiraled. I started wondering how long he'd been watching me. Had he been following me for days? Weeks? Then, just before 2 a.m., a knock shattered the silence. It wasn't frantic or loud, just a single, steady knock. Then another. Then another. My body was locked in place. I barely breathed. The knocks continued unrelenting, calm, calculated. I reached for my phone and dialed 911 with trembling hands. The dispatcher said officers were en route and stayed on the line with me. The knocking didn't stop. 15 seconds between each one. Like he knew I was timing them. Then 30 seconds. Then a whole minute passed in silence. I crept through the hallway, barely daring to breathe. When the officers arrived and pounded on the door, I opened it to find no one there. Just cold air and silence. They searched the area, nothing. This time they said they'd have a patrol car circle the neighborhood for the next few weeks. Weeks passed. I kept my curtains drawn. Bought blackout blinds. Got a Ring camera. Nothing happened. No more notes. No more knocking. But the fear lingered. Every creak in the house made my heart race. Every stranger on the street looked suspicious. I tried to tell myself it was over. But I never really believed that. And then something new hit the news. A massive data breach. Over 2.7 billion records leaked, emails, passwords, addresses, phone numbers, social security numbers. I checked a few sites and sure enough, my name and old passwords were floating around the dark web. It sent a chill down my spine. Whoever that man was, he didn't just pick my house at random. He knew my name. He knew my schedule. My office location. Everything. That's when I decided to sign up for Aura. I'd heard about it from a tech podcast and figured it was worth a shot. Within minutes of signing up, the dashboard lit up with warnings. My name, address, phone number, and even an old banking login were listed across multiple shady data brokers. Aura removed them fast and set up real-time monitoring. I even got alerts when someone tried accessing one of my accounts from out of state. I know it won't stop someone like that man from ever showing up again. But at least I'll know the moment something suspicious happens. And for the first time in months, I'm starting to sleep a little better. Still, sometimes I swear I hear soft footsteps outside at night. And I never open the door unless I know exactly who's behind it. It happened when I was in 8th grade. I had just turned 14, and my family had recently moved from a small town in Vermont to a remote cabin property outside of Missoula, Montana. It was quieter than I liked, no neighbors nearby, no real road, just a long winding dirt path that cut through a thick patch of forest. Our house sat about 1.5 miles from the nearest paved road. It was peaceful, sure, but sometimes too peaceful. My parents, Claire and Greg, worked early shifts in the city. They were gone by 5:30 a.m. every day, so I had to get myself to school. Since no school buses came down our trail, I walked all the way to the county road to catch the bus. It wasn't bad, just a lonely 20-minute walk through pine trees and dirt. One Tuesday morning in October, just as the sky began to brighten with hints of gold, I slung on my backpack and stepped outside. The air was sharp with cold, and the crunch of frost under my boots was the only sound for a while. That quiet was comforting, until I saw it. A red sedan. Parked halfway up the trail, engine off, no lights. I'd never seen it before. It didn't belong to anyone we knew, and there was no reason for a stranger to be on that path unless they were heading to our home. A chill ran deeper than the cold air. As I walked closer, I saw someone inside. A woman. She had messy black hair hanging around her pale face like damp strings. Deep, dark circles under her eyes made her look sick. She was slouched in the driver's seat, staring forward, not moving. but I felt her eyes shift to me the moment I passed. I lowered my gaze and picked up my pace. I could feel her stare boring into the back of my neck all the way to the main road. I didn't tell anyone at school. I tried to pretend it hadn't happened. But that night at dinner, I finally brought it up. "Did one of you have a friend over this morning?" I asked casually. There was a red car parked halfway up the trail. A woman was just sitting inside. My mom and dad stopped chewing. My mom's fork clinked softly against her plate as she set it down. My dad looked at her, then at me. "You sure?" he asked. "Yeah. I walked right by it." She looked weird. Tired or something. They shared a look, one I couldn't quite understand, and my dad nodded slowly. "Probably just someone who got lost," he said too quickly. "Don't worry about it." But I saw the panic behind my mom's eyes. The way her fingers clenched her water glass. The next morning, instead of heading off to work, my parents drove me all the way to school. I didn't question it. But it kept happening. Every day that week, even though they were clearly late for work, they made sure I didn't have to walk alone. By Monday, the routine returned. No one had seen the red sedan again, and I figured maybe it really had been nothing. Just someone who'd taken a wrong turn. That morning, I waved my parents off and grabbed my coat. The woods were quiet as ever, but my nerves had finally settled. Until I saw the car. Same one. Red sedan. Parked in the exact same place. The woman was inside again. I stopped walking, just for a second, heart slamming into my ribs. Her head was already turned toward me. She wasn't just staring this time. She was waiting. Like she knew I'd be there. Same blank face. Same hollow eyes. I made a decision in a flash. I stepped off the trail and cut into the woods, moving fast. I didn't want to walk past her. I figured if I went wide, I could loop back to the road from a different angle. But I wasn't fast enough. I heard the car engine turn over. The tires crunched. When I glanced over my shoulder, she was pulling forward, slowly, matching my pace. I sped up, heart hammering. Then I heard the door open. And footsteps. Crunch. 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 I didn't dare turn around. Then came the voice. "Micah," she cooed. My blood turned to ice. "Micah, sweetheart. Come here." She knew my name. My full name. Her tone was sweet, motherly, but underneath it was something warped and off-kilter. I turned around once, just to look. She was maybe 40, thin, almost ghost-like, standing between the trees in a heavy coat. Her expression was vacant. Her lips didn't smile, even though her voice did. I ran. Full speed. I didn't stop until I reached the back porch of our house, lungs burning and legs numb. I slammed the door behind me, locked it, and called my parents. They came home immediately. I barely got the story out before my dad turned white. "We know who that is," he said quietly. It was his ex-wife. A woman I had never met. Someone he had been married to long before I was born. Someone he never talked about. Apparently, she'd struggled with severe mental health issues for years, had been institutionalized more than once, and had vanished off the grid a long time ago. When I first saw her, my parents hadn't wanted to scare me, but they'd suspected. They even filed a police report that same night. The cops visited her the next day. She told them she was just trying to reconnect and missed her family. But that wasn't the scary part. The scary part was what the officers couldn't do. They said she seemed calm. That they had no legal grounds to detain her. No crime had technically been committed. What they didn't see, what I saw, was her waiting. Watching. Knowing exactly when I'd be alone. We never saw her again after that day. My parents put in cameras, put the house on alert, and never left me to walk alone again. But they never told me what she really wanted, or what might have happened if I had walked toward her that morning. And I've never walked through the woods alone since. This happened in the fall of 2022, when I was 24. I was living alone in a tiny studio apartment on the outskirts of Flagstaff, Arizona. Rent was cheap, and I worked evenings at a small, locally owned convenience store just off Route 66. Most nights were quiet, especially during my usual closing shifts. We had our share of regulars, most of them friendly or at least predictable. But one guy stood out. He started coming in a couple times a week, always right before closing. Everyone who worked there knew him. No one knew his name, but we all dreaded that moment he'd walk through the door with just 10 minutes left. He never smiled, never spoke more than a mumbled hi. Pale, tired eyes, long coat no matter the weather, and this unsettling stillness about him, like he didn't fully belong in the room. That night started like any other. The man walked in at 9:49 p.m., picked up a can of soup and a bottle of water, and came to the counter. I scanned everything, told him the total. He paid in cash, gave a nod, and walked out. Nothing unusual. But I remember getting goosebumps when our eyes met for that brief second. Like something passed between us. By 10:15, I was locking up and walking to my car. The parking lot was almost empty except for one vehicle, his. He was standing next to it, not doing anything. Just standing there, staring at the front of the store like he was still deciding whether or not to come back in. I didn't make eye contact. I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove off. I remember checking the rearview mirror the entire drive home. The next day was my day off, so I let myself stay up late. Around 1 a.m., I finally climbed into bed. My apartment was quiet. Cozy. One small window by the bed, blinds drawn. I was just dozing off when a bright white light flooded the room for a second. Headlights. They lit up the ceiling and disappeared just as quickly. I figured it was a neighbor. Nothing alarming. Until I remembered my apartment faced the back of the building. No road back there. No driveway. No reason for a car to be shining its lights into my window. Still, I managed to fall asleep. Until something pulled me out of a dream. A ringing. I opened my eyes in the dark, unsure if it was real or something from the dream. I checked my phone, nothing. No calls. No texts. The screen was blank. That's when I noticed my bedroom door was cracked open. Just barely. Enough to see the faint line of darkness where it should have been flush with the frame. Enough to feel that cold, gut-wrenching certainty that I hadn't left it open. I always shut it tight before bed. My pulse pounded in my ears as I sat up. I told myself maybe I hadn't pulled it fully closed. Maybe I was misremembering. I walked over and pushed the door shut. It latched perfectly. That's when the earlier light hit me again. The car. The window. I hurried to the window and pulled the blind back an inch. There was a car. Parked halfway in the grass behind my building. I could only see the back half, but my stomach turned instantly. I recognized it. The same dark sedan from the store parking lot. I backed away from the window, heart racing. I turned on every light in the room, grabbed my phone, and stood near the door trying to decide whether to call 911. And then I saw it. From the corner of my eye movement, I turned. And there, from the narrow gap in my closet door, an eye. Watching me. My scream caught in my throat. I backed up so fast I knocked over a lamp. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone as I dialed 911. I didn't wait. I didn't yell. I just ran out the door in my socks and sprinted to the neighbor's apartment 2 doors down, banging like my life depended on it. They answered groggily. I babbled out something about someone being in my apartment. They let me in and stayed on the phone with the dispatcher until the cops arrived. It took about 15 minutes. When officers got to my place, the closet was empty. The front door had been left slightly ajar. But the car? Still there in the lot unlocked. Inside, they found receipts from my store. A tattered notebook with my name and apartment number scrawled over and over. It was him. The man from the store. He'd been watching me. Following me. And sometime during my shift or after I got home, he had broken into my apartment. The worst part? They think the only reason I even woke up that night was because his phone rang while he was hiding in my closet. He silenced it just in time to avoid alerting me more clearly. But it was enough. Enough for me to survive. He was arrested later that morning after they tracked him down through the vehicle. His explanation made no sense, just rambling about how he wasn't going to hurt anyone. But the look in his eyes in the police photo? It said otherwise. I moved out within a week. I changed my number. Got security cameras. Sleep doesn't come easily anymore. Because sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't woken up when I did. And if he ever planned on coming back.